Thank you for being here on behalf of the CXL team. We appreciate a lot that you have prioritized being here over all the other meaningful stuff that you could have done this week. So thank you for that. And let's talk about prioritization then. In every prioritization meeting, what is that one monster that's lurking in the room? It's even wearing CXL colors, but we hate that guy with a passion. Who knows the name? Anybody? Oh, Maria knows. Oh, surprise, surprise. Well, the name is Subjectivity Monster. So let's take a quick walk through a prioritization meeting that you really don't want to have. So there's John, the lead analyst, Dave, co-analyst, and Diana from engineering, and they're trying to decide what are we going to test next. Well, John is a confident guy, right? So he goes, I rate my hypothesis potential impact score 9 out of 10. So not to be completely obvious with 10 out of 10. So we're going to test this next. And there's so much money on the way, I can feel it in my gut. Let's just go for it. But Dave, there on his side, he's going, I'm not so sure, but he's thinking this. He's not saying it. So he's saying, I'm thinking, I haven't been doing this too long, right? So, and he's my boss. Should I challenge him on this thing? I don't know. He looks kind of happy. Maybe I'll pick a better spot. And Diana from engineering, well, it's kind of hard to tell what she's thinking because she's not even looking at the whiteboard. Being in software development myself, I'm thinking she's probably going like, okay, so the development difficulty on this one could be anywhere from 4 to 8, but everything is going well. Maybe I don't want to, step on anybody's toes, so let's just agree to 4 here. Or alternatively, she could think, he's kind of cute. I wonder if he's single. So people get distracted, right? So you never know what goes into these aggregate criteria, but either way, the subjectivity monster is super happy with that result because, well, people are kind of guessing at things. Well, let's take a look at where prioritization fits into the grand scheme of things, the optimization process. So the success formula seems pretty simple, right? So you test as much as possible, you win as much as possible. Simple, right? And you have maximum profit for every win that you have. So that seems pretty simple, on the surface, but there's a couple of things about it that's really effing difficult. And even the running, I have simple there with the asterisk because even getting that volume up can be freaking difficult. For the sake of the argument, let's just say you edit the word every day on your page and get your volume up that way. But still, getting a test win, getting your win rate up and having maximum profitability per test, there are no set rules for that. So let's see, how do we combat that? So of course you have heard a ton about research already. So there's nothing that I can add to that, and we don't have time. So you definitely start with research. Either you use Research Excel or alternative models available, which have been presented here today. But either way, the result is going to be you will have a ton of problems listed. You will have even more insights. You will have test hypotheses. It's going to be a long, long list. And there's going to be a problem. What exactly do you do with that? Like, where do you go next, or where do you start? This is where prioritization can help. And one of the things that you need to account for is always time, as in you don't have infinite time to produce your lifts because there are these uncomfortable people called stakeholders that pay the bills and they want to see some return on it. And there's one question you don't want to hear. Well, that's Eddie Murphy saying, what have you done for me lately? And I saw this when I was a young kid. It has stuck with me ever since. It's just a genius way of saying it. It sums up everything that can go wrong with a relationship. So you got to put in the effort all the time, and you got to get those wins early to build trust in your program. So let's say we have a list of 100 items. Now what? well, obviously you get your priorities straight. Like it sounds a bit like your parents, but it is what it is. So the other thing, how do we contain the subjectivity monster, right? So we have to be systematic about it. Okay, Leho, but which prioritization system should I use, and how do I do it? I'm glad you asked. You're in the right place. Choosing models can be difficult. So a famous British statistician, George Box, said that all models are wrong by nature, but some of them are simply more useful than others. So what we're trying to do here is choose the model that's the best fit for our situation, where we don't go out of our way trying to work with it, because as soon as you have too much work trying to prioritize every session, you're just going to stop using it. But at the same time, it needs to be useful enough to have that high value in the, well, hopefully in the awesome section, but you know, very few people get to the awesome section on the regular. So at the very least, the value should be at the OK level. And what PXL is, the research framework, prioritization framework that we propose, is we simply ask you to bring more data to the table and stop guessing at things so much. So you can't just have an aggregate number and say, I rate this as 9. No. We're going to ask specific questions about the hypotheses you have, and then we're going to score it. And I want to give a shout out to the hotwire.com team that presented here last year. It was Pauline and Josephine there in the corner. They had the initial version of this point model, and we took it and we expanded upon it. So here's an example of what it might look like, and there's a spreadsheet available. I have URLs in the last slide, so you can easily download and see for yourself and experiment with it. So first, we address the visibility of the change to gauge whether it has a chance to have maximum visibility. So the more visibility, the more chance it has to have make a change in user behavior. And above the fold, obviously important, because that's the most noticed part. Then you have noticeable within 5 seconds. You know, you don't want to get people you don't want to have people go to sleep on your page and not notice the change that you make. And adding or removing an element could change user behavior. And high traffic pages is important because the more eyeballs on the test, the bigger the impact might be. And the second part is where you take all your research data that you gathered from whichever model you use, and you split it up into qualitative and the quantitative section. So qualitative might be the user motivation part, such as changing your value proposition to something different, or addressing issues discovered via user testing, or surveys, polls, and interviews. And then quantitative goes through your whatever analytics tool you use. And the last box is heat maps and eye tracking, so whatever metrics are important for you. And the final column goes with ease of implementation, which is always a tricky subject because it might vary depending on the site, the product, the development team's familiarity of the situation. So we have a little scale here. And obviously, you don't want to have complex tests like a complex test setup, so it's always a project that you have to do, and like software development estimations are notorious of going massively wrong. So that's why we have a scale there, and the faster, the better. So the takeaways from this: contain the subjectivity monster, stop guessing at things. And one thing about this model, just like we did with Hotwire's model, is that you can freely take it and extend it to match your own needs. You can figure out which KPIs or which questions are important to answer for your specific organization or your goals, and simply change the questions. Have it, figure out your scoring model also. It doesn't have to be 0 or 1. It could also be weighted to 2 or whatever you think is more important. And always keep in mind the complexity versus ease of use. It's similar to security problems where you could have an infinitely secure door, but nobody will get through it. So you have to figure out how to make the model usable by not loading it with variables in it. Thank you. A bunch of useful links for you. Check them out, and hopefully this is useful.